All right. Well, Reggie, I don't know how much you were able to soak in while you were away as far as Minnesota sports, but the Minnesota Wild, they've been in a back and forth burner with the St. Louis Blues. We had Seth Topol on to break down the back and forth action yesterday. If you missed it, make sure to check that out up on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel right after this. But here's your 30-second recap. Wild lose game 1 for RIP after the decision to start Marc Andre-Fleury in net. Much to the chagrin of many, they roll with him again in games 2 and 3. Well, the Wild outscore the Blues 11-3. They go up 2-1. Sunday night, Blues come out with a vengeance, catch the Wild, a little flat-footed, it felt like. They carve them up 5-2. Series all tied back up at 2s. Now a best-of-3 game series. Wild get that home ice advantage. Mm-hmm. Reggie, outside of the goalie decisions, one of the biggest storylines has been the disappearance of Kevin Fiala. I mean, he ended the final 3-4 weeks of the season on absolute fire, but here we are, 4 games in, he scored 0 goals, just 1 assist, and has had a handful of, what many would call just kind of flat-out bad penalties. Really, Sunday night he was called for a 4-minute high-sticking penalty. I'll just kind of give you the floor now for your analysis of what you've seen, what you've heard, maybe starting with Kevin Fiala's kind of disappointing start to the playoffs so far.
Well, it's funny. When I was away, it's like you never really truly unplug.
Right.
Because I'm getting pings on my watch. I'm getting pings on the phone about different score updates and all that. And I'm like, oh, and the wifey's like, what happened? I'm like, oh, the Twins scored. Or, the Wild are up. On the Blues right now. They're really
You're tapped
giving
in,
it to
man.
them.
You can't clock out.
And it's just funny because we get back into the room and the TV is on TNT, and of course the Wild are playing, and the wife was like, "Oh, see, look, now you can watch." And I'm like, "Man, I am on vacation and I'm sitting here watching the Wild, and I'm like into it." And so I was able to check out a little bit of Game 3, saw a little bit of Game 4 as well. And it's just so interesting, man. Like Kevin Fiala ended the season, and, I mentioned it last night on my sportscast, the KARE 11. The dude was probably one of, if not the most hottest player in all of the NHL to end the regular season. Like the dude was just like scorching hot. And I know he had a little bit of a disappointing series last year in the playoffs as they kind of got their first round exit as well. But it's just so interesting for some reason, like when the postseason started, like all of a sudden he just went cold. He went flat. And, when you see games 2 and 3, you're like, oh, okay, like they got enough talent and, enough excellence on this roster to just overcome him. And, especially Game 3, it's just like, ooh, the Wild are cooking. Okay. And then, 4 comes out and you're just like, yeah, they probably need Fiala, because it's like when you don't have other pieces working, when you're not able to get 3 and 4 goals from Kirill Kaprizov on a nightly basis, that's just very unrealistic to think that he'll have that type of production night in and night out, even though he's just amazing. He's an awesome player. You need Fiala to come on. Like, come on, dude. Like, and it's interesting because, when they talk to him after his performance the other night on Sunday, like he finally scored a point, got an assist, and it's like, wow, that's the first real meaningful action that he's gotten. I think it's been 14 shots on goal and nothing doing except for that 1 assist now in the game on Sunday. And so I think he was upset. They asked him, like, are you frustrated with your performance? He's just like, yeah.
The one word, yes, after a deep sigh.
But I think what is hopeful for him is that, him kind of getting into that groove there in the third period and getting that assist, maybe that sparks something for him to maybe come out, play with a little bit more aggression, and maybe he can, do his thing and be the Kevin Fiala that we all have come to know, especially that last month of the regular season. It's funny because Bill Guerin in his last press conference, he was asked about Fiala, who, the Wild are going to have a decision to make soon about him. And he's just like, you're only as good as your last game. And then he starts laughing, and it's just like, Bill, what are you saying, my guy? Like, are you being serious about this? Because that seems a little ominous there.
Right.
And so it's like Kevin's not doing himself any favors right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it earlier. I had it written down in my notes. Worth noting, Fiala, too, is not the first time we've seen a little Jekyll and Hyde. Again, remember, you mentioned it last year in the playoffs. Well, first heading in, he was ready. He was a key piece to getting into the playoffs for the Wild. But in the first round versus the Golden Knights, just nowhere to be found again. I mean, you rarely heard his name called. So hoping he can kind of break out of that playoff funk starting tonight. Reggie, while you were gone, the hot topic for me, whenever we talked Wild, I always started with that goaltender situation.
Have
And the
to.
decision not to roll with the hot hand, 13-0-3 heading in. It was disappointing. I mean, that's just how I felt. I was just disappointed to see Fleury in the net game one, and then they get rocked 4-0, and you say, oh, no, here we go. Now what do you do? But the decision to stick with him in game two really sent a loud and clear message that said, look, this is why we went out and got this guy for the playoffs, despite the age. The guy's one of the best goalies maybe of all time. He's got the experience, the pedigree on his resume.
Yep.
He's got the Stanley Cup victory. Win or lose, this is our guy, and we're not looking back. No regrets, no second thoughts about it from the coaching staff or front office. What was your thoughts and first reactions to the decision to sit Talbot? And if they lose this series, I mean, is it the big elephant in the room? We just look back and play the blame game, or is that too easy?
I think that's too easy. That's a little low-hanging fruit. You know, you got to give the legend the benefit of the doubt, and that's exactly what Coach Everson is doing. I mean, he had the bad performance in game one, and he's just like, look, I can't go away from this dude for one bad performance because it wasn't just all on him. You know, watching that game last Monday, I'm like, man, I can't put that all on him. Like, there were some goals that he was a little out of place on, but like I can't put that all on him for the 4-0 loss. And what's interesting is he came out in the next two games and was the flower that, you know, we all know and have come to just expect in these playoff performances. But here's my thing. And, you know, I guess you don't sit a guy who is hot, and games 2 and 3, he was hot. And so it's just like, how do you go away from that guy? But here's my thing. At what point do you utilize Cam Talbot?
Right.
Like,
where are we at here? Yeah.
How
what's
do you
the game plan?
I mean,
right.
The dude has, like, you know, if you talked about Kevin Fiala maybe being 1A as far as the hottest player on the team, Talbot's probably 1B. Or maybe he's 1A and Fiala's 1B. You know what I mean? Like, Talbot was playing some of the best goaltending of his career, even, like, especially after Flower came. Like, I think he was something like 13-0-2 or something like that after the Wild traded for Fleury. And it's just like, wow, like a guy with this type of production, a guy that is playing this well in net, like, how do you go away from this guy? And I understand, like, you know, a few games and, you know, all that. And, you know, that's why you traded for a guy like Fleury. And I get that. But it's like, do you know, this really decisive game? I think whoever wins game 5 in these best of 7 series in hockey, I think they go on to win 79% of the time after that. They go on to win the series. And it's just like, with games as pivotal as the ones that you have coming up, like, at what point do you utilize Cam Talbot, or do you just leave him? You know what I mean? And then it's just like, well, then when you actually do need to use him, or you decide to use him, it's going to be tough to just have the dude come in like cold turkey like that. Just here you go. Just throw him in there and expect to, you know, I mean, he's a professional, so you do expect him to, you know, go out there and handle himself well and do what it is that you put him in net to do. But when you bring a guy in cold and you don't know exactly like what you're going to get from him, because you're just like, well, we'll just put him out there and just hope for the best, you know, because you really didn't get him into any type of a playing rhythm. You just, after the season, you've had him sit for like 2 weeks. I really don't know what happens. And so now it's a situation where you have to ride with Marc Andre-Fleury because he's who you've been riding with so far, and he's who you're going to have to stick with, because you can't really mess up, the I would say the chemistry. You can't really mess up the vibe, if you will, by changing goaltenders, because like if you were going to do it, maybe you would have done it last game or the game before that. Now it just seems like a really odd time to do it. So I think you got to stick with Flower.
Yeah, I think you're right. A ton of great points there. I think you got to just make your decision and commit to it. You can't waffle back and forth and sit there and second guess yourself. And you're right. The longer that time goes on, the harder it is to get to put in Talbot in the net. I mean, you're not really setting himself up for success, so to speak. Important to remember too, as hot as Talbot was, his career playoff record is only 15-15. So the Wild looked at that and saw a guy with the experience and pedigree of Fleury was even available and jumped all over it. And as much as I've critiqued that decision to roll with him every game thus far, I do certainly think it was the right move to be aggressive, go acquire him for this time of year, no doubt. Last one.
Well, on the other side too, the Blues, went with Bennington.
That's right.
Over Husso, and it's just like that really paid off. I mean, that was a gutsy decision from them after losing in game 3 and kind of being like on their heels a little bit to make a decision like that to change goaltenders. I will say, Bennington does have a championship pedigree. That's who they rode to win the Stanley Cup. So like he's done it, but like you go away from the guy that you have been riding with in a game that is just like it could be make or break for you all's like season on the line. Like that was a gutsy move and it paid off for them. So maybe that's something that shows the Wild like, hey, it can be done. But it's just another one that's just like, ooh, like you just kind of clenching your pearls a little bit like, oh, I don't know about this, because it's just a tough thing to make a decision like in the middle of it, like when you're in the fire and you need to win these games.
Yeah, when you've got two teams so closely matched up, I mean, top to bottom, the long history and pedigree, the rivalry that goes back between these teams. It seems like the coaching decisions ultimately play such a huge factor in the ultimate outcome of these games. One decision, though, by these coaches could ultimately end your season or keep you alive for another round. Going to be really interesting. Last one, talking NHL playoffs, just looking around the rest of the league and landscape, how these other series are shaping out after last night's games. Capitals and Panthers all tied up at 2 games apiece. Penguins crushed the Rangers last night 7-2. They go up 3-1. Flames and Stars tied back up at 2-2. And the Colorado Avalanche sweep the Predators. They'll get a nice little vacation and break here as they wait for the winner of the Wild and Blues. Man, talk about a tough road to the Cup if you're the Wild. That's how you're rewarded with this 2 seed, huh? Are you kidding me? What's going on with that?
I think what's interesting is like, what did Ric Flair say? To be the man, you got to beat the man.
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
And so look,
right.
the Avalanche have been the top team on that side, and so it's just like, you gotta beat them if you want. I mean, you conquer demons if you beat the Blues, because you know the history there and just the recent history of this season not beating them in the regular season, and it's just like, all right, you got to go through the Blues, okay, and then you get through the Blues, and now you get the Avalanche, which they have beaten them this season, but it's a different beast in the playoffs, and I mean, Nashville was no slouch. And they went ahead and just swept them and just, we're gonna chill in the hot tub for a little bit and wait on you guys to beat each other up until we play each other. So you guys, do what you do. Go 7 if you want. We'll be here chilling. We're
Have
good.
Fun. Yeah.
We're good. Have a great time. Yeah. Just do your thing. We're over here though. We'll see you in a bit. And so I think that part is interesting, and hopefully maybe, whoever wins this series between the Wild and the Blues, maybe you catch Colorado slipping a little bit because they've had all this time to just rest and chill and wait for the next opponent, and maybe you can kind of jump on them a little bit. That maybe is the hope, but it's just so interesting. You see domination from them, from the Penguins, but then, games and series that you thought like, oh, maybe these might be over. Like now they're tied at 2 games apiece, and you're just like, wow, like anybody can win these series, and especially like the Toronto Tampa series. I think game one, Toronto came out and beat the Lightning 5-0, and you're just like, whoa, what's happening? Like, you got the defending champs that you're just whooping up on like this, and then now the series is tied at 2 games apiece. And I think that is kind of like a theme, because just when it seems like maybe a team is going to run away, and you can see it in this Wild Blues series as well, when it seems like maybe a team is going to run away, it just comes right back down to the mean right there, and you're even. And so I think it makes for exciting series across the board, and I'm excited to see how things play out.
It reminds me, let's say the Wild do advance and match up with the Avalanche. It reminds me a little bit of the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies, because I kind of like going in as the underdog. I mean, listen, Avalanche are going to have all the pressure on them. So you come in, nothing to lose, playing with house money, probably shouldn't be there anyway. So to be the best, you got to beat the best anyways. Can't control who you play and when you play them. So control what you can control and just go in there and give your best. Puck drops tonight. Another late start, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard.
Killing us.
Oh, man. Rest assured, Xcel Energy Center, though, that's going to be electric, man. Reggie and I will be back here tomorrow, break down all that action.